Okay, I think we're good here. So it is a crazy time for anyone who is in the event hosting business, whether it's just a small vertical of your organization or the main revenue driver. As the director of marketing and community for Power to Fly, virtual events were always a piece of the pie, but never really the whole thing. In 2019 alone, I hosted over 300 virtual events, contributing to thousands of new users and a significant piece of our yearly traffic. But in-person events have always been our bread and butter. As I'm sure is the case with most of you, COVID-19 wreaked havoc on our in-person event cadence, with over 100 in-person events scheduled for Q2 alone. Thankfully, because of my efforts creating a new virtual event process, we were not only able to ramp up the number of virtual events this quarter, but transition all of our in-person events to virtual, including hiring events for some of the major players like New Relic, Trail of Bits, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and even Microsoft, all organizations that are making over 10 plus hires at each one of these events. So my first thought during this wild transition was, whoa, this is amazing. I'm totally cut out for this. Bring it on. But that was quickly followed by crap. Now everyone's going virtual. How are we going to stand out? Will people still want to come to my virtual events? And what if they're not good enough anymore? As community managers, event planners, marketers, I think we all have similar thoughts running through our heads at all times. But during these unprecedented times, it feels like even more so. My goal here today is to completely strip you of any doubt that you might have about hosting virtual events and empower you to take the skills you've honed hosting all of these in-person events and transition them to 100% virtual. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say something pretty bold, and maybe you won't agree with me right now, but that's totally okay. And when you really break it down, and if planned properly, the only difference between an in-person event and a virtual one is a screen, and especially the screen that you're sitting in front of today. We have access to more tools, resources, and technology than we've ever had before. And new companies are flourishing right this second because they understand that this human-to-human connection we all desire is actually completely possible online, and not in that creepy chat roulette way of the 90s, a real human-to-human way. So before we dive into the actual logistics, I need you to take a step back and think about your goals for the event that you're throwing. Just because your event is now virtual doesn't mean your goals should be changing. I've highlighted just a few of the common event goals and some of my personal favorites. Again, all of these goals can be utilized for both in-person and virtual events. The best goals are SMART goals, ones that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. Next, I want you to think about your event agenda and perhaps the best in-person event you've ever been to. And I want you to write down exactly what you did from the moment you got your invitation to the moment you stopped thinking about it. Maybe it was yesterday. I'm sharing one of my favorite Power to Fly events on this screen right now as an example. And sure, this is a bit condensed for the sake of this presentation, but the majority is there. And everything, I mean everything that is mentioned right here can be recreated virtually, even the food and beverage if you're feeling generous. So the key here for translating your in-person events to virtual is finding a software that fits your needs and not settling for something that doesn't. And trust me when I say, if you can't find something perfect, just ask around or build it yourself. No, I don't mean hire a dev team, but when you take the time to write down your vision for a perfect event, whether that's an in-person event or a virtual one, then you can pick apart each piece and decide how to go virtual and what software you're going to need to get there. What I will say, though, For any event software platform, there are a few key things to look out for before purchasing to make sure that those tools are available. And one, that is an attendance tracker. So does the software provide you with a report of who actually attended the virtual event? And better yet, for how long? Of course, we're going to be working with event CMSs that will tell us who RSVP'd, but we actually want to know who showed up. Two, does it have proper host controls where you can designate one or two admins as a host? These admins should have access to mute or unmute features, screen share, and the ability to remove attendees from the meeting if necessary. Three, where is the meeting being recorded? Do you have to pay for additional storage or for recording access? Can you download that recording directly on your screen? And what about backups? All really important things that sometimes we neglect to think about when we're deciding which software we're purchasing for our event. Now, on this screen are some of my tried and true favorite brands when it comes to delivering a high quality and engaging event online. Each one has some really great, unique qualities, and when used together can create some really powerful and successful events. But again, being the perfectionist I am, I needed something a little more customizable. And that's where Zoom comes in. So for me, and I think for many of you, Zoom is a big name in the game right now. But after exploring a plethora of different options, there are a few key items that really sealed the deal for me when it comes to event platforms. And that is Zoom Meeting, not Zoom Webinar. It's the only platform that allows for more than 100 participants to not only be on camera, but talking for the duration of your event. Heck, you can even purchase an add-on that helps you get more people on camera and off mute if your heart desires. So to me, this is the most important aspect of hosting virtual events, getting the most number of people on camera and participating at one time. Some of the other important features that it has are, accessibility. So the option to join from both your computer, an app, your phone if needed. Literally anyone across the globe has access to 3 different options when joining your event. So to me, that's just a win-win. Zoom also has some pretty awesome engagement tools like breakout rooms, screen sharing, polls, live annotate. Try your hand at a game of Zoom Pictionary. It's really fun. And another really cool add-on to Zoom and actually Google Meet is Prezi Video. So I'm not sure if anyone has ever heard of this, but this is also a great way to add a bit of interaction to your virtual event. And I'm not sure my video is not playing right now, but basically, it allows you to create another level of engagement. So you can actually put a Prezi, if you've ever heard of Prezi, on top of your Zoom screen. It's totally free. You can purchase more advanced versions if you are feeling a little ambitious, but it creates another level, like I said, of engagement and give you more interaction than a traditional deck would. So very cool. I encourage everyone to check that out if they have time. But what I personally use, like I said, we've created a completely unique event CMS at Power to Fly. And that has to do with really kind of hacking, if you may, into Zoom. There were so many little details that we needed to recreate our in-person event schedule and make these virtual events really flow the way that our in-person events did. So each event has its own registration page, as well as a secondary event page that only RSVP guests can access. This is where each of our sections, like the networking session, the keynote section, the breakout session, all live, hosted via separate Zoom links, but still accessible from that main page. So for this example, I'm going to talk about one of the most common events, in-person events that we host at Power to Fly, which is one of those networking events. And I'm more than happy to dive into other examples in the Q&A or later on Twitter. But these sessions operate in 3 sections, like I said: networking, keynote and panel, and then Q&A. Of course, more networking, but it's really the same as the first networking, so I don't think we need to go into too much detail there. But how do the sections operate? Well, quite literally, just as they would in real life. So we keep our networking sessions open for the entirety of the event with at least one team member manning that particular Zoom room. This person is also there to provide a link to the keynote room should anyone join during that time, and share an ask or offer, preferably both, as well as a link to their profile of choice. So this is absolutely possible to do with a singular Zoom room by implementing the breakout room feature, which so many of us have used. And my suggestion is to make sure you have at least one internal team member available for each breakout room to facilitate that conversation, and make sure there's effective and efficient networking taking place. If you're looking for a more technical and efficient networking tool, definitely check out the Icebreaker software. I know they're doing a demo here today, so it's incredible. It will allow you to randomly match with different attendees one-on-one for a designated amount of time, and random matching for the duration of the event. When we're talking about the keynote and the panel, I think they're pretty self-explanatory, but as a moderator, you should be ensuring all participants are muted throughout the presentation, that the keynote presenter has the floor and the room to speak without interruption. And it's a great time to incorporate engagement tools. So the polls, pre-submitted questions, using the screen share annotate tools, obviously also utilizing that chat feature is a great way to create a more engaged conversation and prep the audience for that panel. So as far as the panel is concerned, I'm all about the questions. And I did a talk on this last year at the InPerson CMX Summit, but my tip is to make your session as interactive as possible by allowing your panel to introduce themselves and then strictly take that audience Q&A. Better yet, make it mandatory for your RSVPs to submit a question for your panelists when they register for your event. And you can use this to kick off the Q&A section and then, of course, run through questions organically as they pepper into your chat box. This is quite literally the best way to foster engagement for this virtual event and keep it as in tune to what would be happening live as possible. This is also a great way to position yourself as a thought leader, because not only are you giving this platform for your speaker, your panel, your keynote speaker to share their knowledge, but to also meet the needs of your community and make sure that they're getting the most value out of this in-person event as humanly possible. Last but not least, after this panel discussion, kick it off or end the conversation virtual event with more networking. Everyone loves to chat and discuss as we would in real life. So, last but not least, it might seem silly, but something I hear time and time again from event attendees is how much they like the food or the drinks, the event swag, all of that good stuff. And, this can be done virtually too. Of course, it's totally optional and dependent on how above and beyond your organization wants to go and how big your budget is. But feel free to check out giftcards.com, eGifter, Grubhub, Seamless. Brilliant is another amazing virtual swag company. But they're great options if you want to either provide e-gift cards to attendees beforehand so they can enjoy food and beverage during the actual virtual event, or treat them to something branded or fun afterwards. If you want to do something but not spend the money, feel free to send over free resources, ebooks, downloadables, things that you would traditionally either charge for or require a secondary login. Just give this to these people for free. Keep them warm, engaged with your community. Everybody loves those free gifts and the swag. And of course, totally optional. But last and not least, just relax. Really, anything that you can do in person can be done online if you take a step back and just think about it from a technology perspective. Match that technology with what the goals that you're trying to achieve, and then, come excited and prepared and ready to chat with your community, because I guarantee you they are super excited to be chatting with you. So that is my presentation. So I think now we are here for Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lauren. Yes, there are a couple questions that came out of the session. So that's excellent. I'm going to, can you stop sharing your screen so people can see our face?
Yes. Perfect.
And first, Katie asks, standing out is huge, but how do you still give your content without overwhelming attendees?
Oh, great question. And, I feel like I sound like a broken record here, but I really hate the term webinar. Again, that was kind of the basis of my other CMX talk, because I feel like it's very impersonal. I hate the idea of giving these really robust and verbose presentations and then spending, 5 minutes for Q&A at the very end. People want engagement. So if you want to stand out to your community, I really encourage you to find a way that resonates with them to get them engaged throughout the conversation. Ask your community what they want. So for us at Power to Fly, it was quite literally, not creating the content beforehand. We don't do formal presentations. We just do Q&A. And once our speakers are able to see what the community wants, so they see all the questions beforehand, then they put together either a couple slides that are, informational, their diagrams, what have you. But then we know that we're automatically bringing value to our community. And that's going to help you stand out, because automatically you're creating an engaged and desired event. So I would, kind of take a step back there and say, stop thinking about how do I stand out, but how do I make an impact to my community and make sure that what I'm presenting to them is valuable. I hope that answers your question.
Makes sense to me. Definitely. I feel like that kind of answered Samantha's question, which was why Zoom meeting over Zoom webinar. So I feel like we got that answer. Lizbeth wants to know, what tool are you using for registrations and your RSD landing page? Because the Zoom link doesn't have that. Are you using something else?
To start, we were using Eventbrite. So I think that's super easy. Obviously, Bevy's out there. You can just use Typeform. There are tons of options. But for us at Power to Fly, again, we wanted this to be a little more customizable. So we ended up creating our own event CMS, which included this custom form, question, style, registration. But all of this can be done with any event platform. So you can customize in the back end what happens once someone registers. So they get a confirmation email either with that Zoom link. I think even Eventbrite just launched some sort of partnership with Zoom where they have a specific Zoom link spot. But I think everyone's being really cognizant of the fact that, in-person doesn't really exist anymore. So we have to find a way to incorporate either the links or landing pages to these virtual spaces. So I think 9 platforms out of 10 are going to be able to give you that access.
Cool. It's also a great place for, Bevy also does that virtual event RSVP and ticketing.
Yes.
We do have another question, and I think this one was kind of answered during the event, but there are a couple people who are still hoping for it. Having that individual networking opportunity virtually. Perhaps Lauren, you can share the list of the tools that you suggested for that on Twitter.
Absolutely, I can. And like I said, there are so many ways to hodgepodge this. So, I hope the main thing that you take away from, this conversation today is that before you pick platforms, pick softwares, really write down what your ideal agenda is, and then match the software to that. So if your goal is to do just, group sessions of networking, like I said, we can do, Zoom breakout sessions. You can do individual Google Meets. You can do Icebreaker. There are so many platforms out there, but you need to decide, for yourself before looking at all these softwares and overwhelming yourself. What's your goal? What are you trying to get out of this event?
Great. And I think that kind of feeds into the last question we'll have time for. Alfredo from Google asks, why is having the highest number of people actually face to face? Why is that so important to you and your
Absolutely.
community?
So, I mean, the theme of this session was translating in-person events to virtual. So I have never been to an in-person event where I went with a bag over my head and no one could see my face. So to me, if you want to make your virtual event as like an in-person event as possible, you have to allow for everyone to not only be able to access the event, but actively participate and engage. So that means turning your camera on, that means, unmuting yourself, that means really participating. And, perhaps if you're in a community that, needs that extra push or engagement, it's going to take a little time. But once you cross that barrier and get people on camera, communicating and talking, trust me, it's going to make a world of difference.
Perfect.
Yay. These were great questions. Thanks, y'all.
Well done, Lauren.